Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Morning, we're reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 4, Text 25. Etadivatma Burajan Naradaya Viprichyate Vedagarbo Vyadachaksha Yadaha Hariyatmana Etadivatma Burajan Naradaya Viprichyate Vedagarbo Vyadachaksha Yadaha Hariyatmana Etadivatma Burajan Naradaya Viprichyate Vedagarbo Vyadachaksha Yadaha Hariyatmana. Come on up. On this matter, Eva, exactly, Atmabu, the firstborn, Rajan, my dear king, Naradaya, unto Narada Muni, Viprichyate, having inquired about it from Vedagarbha, one who is impregnated with Vedic knowledge from birth. Abhyadat, apprised. Shakshat, directly. Yadaha, what he spoke. Hari, the Lord. Atmana, under his own. Brahma. Translation. My dear king Brahma, the firstborn, on being questioned by Narada, exactly apprised him on this subject as it was directly spoken by the Lord to his own son, who was impregnated with Vedic knowledge from his very birth. Translation, please repeat. My dear king, Brahma, the firstborn, on being questioned by Narada, exactly apprised him on this subject as it was directly spoken by the Lord to his own son, who was impregnated with Vedic knowledge from his birth. Purport. As soon as Brahma was born of the abdominal lotus petals of Vishnu, he was impregnated with Vedic knowledge, and therefore he is known as Vedagarbha, or a Vedantist from the embryo. Without Vedic knowledge or perfect, infallible knowledge, no one can create anything. All scientific knowledge and perfect knowledge are Vedic. One can get all types of information from the Vedas, and as such, Brahma was impregnated with all perfect knowledge, so it was possible for him to create. Thus, Brahma knew the perfect description of creation, as it was exactly apprised to him by the Supreme Lord Hari. Brahma, on being questioned by Narada, told Narada exactly what he had heard directly from the Lord. Narada again told exactly the same thing to Vyasa, and Vyasa also told Sukadev exactly what he had heard from Narada, and Sukadev was going to repeat the same statements as he had heard them from Vyasa. That is the way of Vedic understanding, The language of the Vedas can be revealed only by the above-mentioned disciplic succession and not otherwise. There is no use in theories. Knowledge must be factual. There are many things that are complicated. One cannot understand them unless they are explained by one who knows. The Vedic knowledge is also very difficult to know and must be learned by the above-mentioned system, otherwise it is not at all understood. Sukadeva Goswami therefore prayed for the mercy of the Lord so that he might be able to repeat the very same message that was spoken directly by the Lord to Brahma, or what was directly spoken by Brahma to Narada. Therefore the statements of creation explained by Sukadeva Goswami are not at all, as the mundaners suggest, theoretical, but are perfectly correct. One who hears these messages and tries to assimilate them gets perfect information of the material creation. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports of the second canto, fourth chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled The Process of Creation. Now this point is being emphasized again and again here by Sukadeva Goswami, and that point being that how to understand true knowledge. And of course we understand there's aparashaya and parashaya. Parashaya is defined as understood by man individually, and aparashaya means purusha, or means being, a being. Now aparashaya means one who is not an ordinary person of this world, beyond this world. So the Vedic knowledge is aparashaya, heard and instructed by someone who is not a man of this world, who is beyond this world. Of course, that being the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. So this is very, very important, because Krishna is perfect, therefore that knowledge coming from Krishna will also be perfect. The parashaya, that knowledge, is subject to defects, and is not actually the way, as Prabhupada emphasizes. Vedic knowledge is very difficult to know and must be learned by the above-mentioned system, otherwise it is not at all understood. So and this is stressed here again and again by Sukadeva Goswami, and he says here very specifically that Brahma, being questioned by Narad, apprised him on the subject as he had heard it from the Lord, by the Lord to him. So very, very important. So there are mainly three points here in Prabhupada's explanation of this verse. First of all, the Vedic knowledge is perfect. And actually, all scientific knowledge and perfect knowledge are actually Vedic. This is one point. And one must learn these things from a guru in parampara, in disciplic succession, aparashaya. There are 2 points. And the third point is that when you hear it, you have to repeat it exactly as you heard it. You can't embellish it more. You just repeat it as it is. So these are the 3 points. Now I'll go through one by one. Is that Vedic knowledge is perfect, aparashaya, and actually anything in the world is covered by this Vedic knowledge. Now, interestingly enough, now in the matter of accepting a guru, we know that Krishna instructs that one must accept the guru to understand the absolute truth. Very, very important, essential. And we know that Krishna himself, Lord Rama, Lord Chaitanya, who are the Supreme Personality of Godhead, they themselves, all the knowledge comes from them, but they themselves accepted the guru to show the example. Lord Ram, Vashishta of course was the general guru in the palace. He later also learned things from Vishvamitra and others, but Vashishta was his main guru. And of course Krishna and Balaram, we know, The Guru, they followed the system of the Guru, meaning they went to the Gurukula. And who was the Guru of Krishna and Balaram? Sandipani Muni. Sandipani Muni, I think I've mentioned before that one time we had a meeting in Ujjain, and nearby there is the ashram. You can go and visit the ashram of Sandipani Muni. And it's a wonderful place. There nearby there's a ghat, just at the bottom is the ghat where it is said Krishna called all the holy rivers because his guru was elderly and he couldn't go bathe, so he called them nearby so then he could bathe. There's all different things you can see there. But this is the ashram of Sandipani Muni. And Krishna and Balaram, although the Supreme Personality, they didn't have to learn anything. They are the original instructors of everyone, but they themselves, Lord Chaitanya accepted a Guru, Ishvara Puri. So the personality of God and the incarnations all accepted gurus to emphasize on this point, although they are the original guru. So it's very, very important. Now, the Vedic knowledge. Now, traditionally, in the ancient Gurukulas, we know that we can read in the Krishna book, also in the 10th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, what Krishna and Balaram learnt at the ashram of Sandipani Muni, the 64 arts. There are two divisions of learning, and this is like, and they learnt in the system that is very traditional in the Gurukulas. It's called, they're called Vidya. There are, of course, there's unlimited amounts of branches, but they say there are 14 Vidyas. The Vidyas means the Vedas, the 4 Vedas, the Upangas, the Puranas, and then there's sometimes the primary. Sometimes it's 18. They include the Upaveda, like the Ayurveda and the Dhanu Veda, and the Gandharva Veda, which is the music, and the Artha Shastra, which is the pronunciation of things and so on. So sometimes some great scholars say there are 14, and some say there are 18. But although they say these are the primary ones, but there are many other branches as well. So these are, and this was taught to Krishna and Balaram when they were in the ashram of Sandipani Muni, and also they learnt the 64 arts. These are called kalas. There's the Vidyas, that which is spoken and heard, Vidya, that knowledge, and then the kalas are the arts. There are many, actually some say there are unlimited arts, but the primary is said to be 64. So this is traditional in the ancient Gurukul system, to learn all these things. And interestingly, I was looking up, you can look up in the Krishna book, what Sandipani Muni taught, and what the Krishna and Balaram. Now, Krishna and Balaram being the Supreme Personality of God, they knew everything already. They are the instructors, as I already said. But it is said they learnt these things, and each one of these things they learnt in a day. So they learnt the 64 arts in 64 days. And all the Vidyas as well. That's actually mentioned here from the Bhagavatam. Now, it is said that Sandipani Muni was so satisfied by Krishna and Balaram, by their submissive behavior and respectful behavior, he taught them the entire Vedas together with their 6 collieries and the Upanishad. So these are all the Vidyas. So he taught all that. And then the angas of the Vedas, as I said, it can be Dhanu Veda. Dhanu Veda is the military, and then Ayurveda is the medicine. Now, Ayurveda, of course, it is said that I've read on quite a few shastras that the Ayurveda there's only 5 or 6 branches really pretty much known these days. The others have kind of been lost in time. But there actually, some say there's more than 100 branches of Ayurveda, which includes surgery and all this type of thing. So it gets to my point here. I'll get to the point where actually all knowledge is contained in the Veda, and that knowledge is perfect because it's coming in the Veda, which comes from Aparashaya. So if one wants to learn even surgery, even agriculture, even architecture, all metallurgy, all these things, and so here that it is Sandipani Muni taught Krishna and Balaram Dhanu Veda, the Dharma Shastras, Mimamsa, politics. They learn all these things. These are the vidyas. And here it is mentioned, how to make peace, how to make war, Yana, how to march, how to sit tight, Asana, how to sit tight, Vaida, dividing one's forces. Some say seeking the protection of more powerful alliances. So all this was learned. So they would learn all those things. And then, of course, then they learn all the 64. Now, here it is mentioned. I'll just go give you an example of some of them. Vadyam, playing musical instruments. These are the arts. These are called the kalas. These are the arts. Playing musical instruments. Gitam, singing. Nirtyam, dancing. Natyam, it's like Bharat, Natyam, drama. These are the arts. Natyam, alekyam, painting. Painting. Painting the face with coloured cosmetics. This is all an art that was learned, how to do it. Making a bed of flowers. Colouring one's teeth. Clothes and limbs. Covering a bed. Inlaying floors with jewels. This was an art that was learned. What's some other? Now, how to cook, how to make bread, cake, delicious food, salad, so on, how to cook. All these things were learned. Preparing drinks, how to make nice drinks. Tinging with drafts with red colour, all the different needlework and weaving. Gita Govinda is very good at that. I remember we were down in Sydney and she sent down, she knitted a scarf made of local cotton, and that we presented to Prabhupada on the Vyasa in Sydney. Beautiful thing, amazing. How to do weaving. So this was all making, solving riddles, poems, poetry, and now how to play on a lute. All these. Now also along with that, metallurgy, mineralogy. Herbal medicine, animal husbandry, carpentry, architecture, all mentioned here. So there are some medicines also. They learn about some medicines in the arts. It is not exactly Ayurveda, but they learned about some medicines, general understanding. The more specific is the Ayurveda, which was part of the Vidyas. This is the this makes the 18 when it's Upaveda. These are called secondary Vedas. Upaveda means Dhanu Shastra and Ayurveda, Dhanu Veda, Ayurveda, all these. Gandhava, music, Gandhava Veda is the whole music. So when Krishna and Balaram went to Sandipani Muni's ashram, they learn all the traditional things that any student who goes to a Gurukul would learn, especially in the ancient times. And so they would learn it very perfectly. And these arts and sciences and Vidyas, they would be passed down through Aparashat, through the Vedas. Now, originally it is Krishna to Brahma and then to Narad. Also, some of these things were put forward by great, what's called Maharishis. There's Rishis, they are great saints, and then there's called what's Maharishis. Now, this is explained in the Shastra. Maharishis are those who are within their hearts, just like Brahma, Tani Brahma, he received this knowledge in the heart because he's so elevated, directly instructed by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So there are other Maharishis who get this information from within, and they are the ones that give these ancillaries and all these other aspects of the Veda. So it's very, very divine knowledge, and it's very perfect knowledge. So this is the point Prabhupada is making here, that actually he says here, interesting, all scientific knowledge and perfect knowledge are Vedic. A very bold statement. Perfect knowledge. So you have science today, and you have knowledge today. But in other words, Prabhupada is saying it's not perfect, because the perfection of it is in the Veda. So even, modern architecture, modern medicine, modern research, these are considered imperfect. But they are there in the Veda if one knows how to find them in the Veda. Of course, some of them have been lost over time. But nevertheless, they are there. So better to learn those things, how to do it in that way. Even as far as, architecture, metallurgy, mineralogy, as mentioned here. All those things were learnt by Krishna and Balaram. They mastered in 64 days all those things. These are called arts. Architecture is called an art. Shilpa Shastra is a shastra that talks about sculpturing and architecture and so on and so forth. But these are considered art. The Vidya is the Veda. This is a more, another level. But still, these are very, very important to live in the world. So when you learn all these things in the Veda, then they are considered perfect. When you learn them in the modern era, some of them work and some of them there's many mistakes. They're considered imperfect. Just like even like surgery today, that someone goes to studies medicine, becomes a doctor, and specialises in surgery. But the surgery was there in Ayurveda also. Surgery was there in Ayurveda. So this is the point that Prabhupada makes here. That one has to learn these things in the Veda and learn them from the Guru. Krishna and Balaram learnt from the Guru. Lord Ram learnt from the Guru. Lord Chaitanya, he had Guru. They were the personality of Godhead. So, but somehow or other, when it comes to spiritual life, we don't think we need anyone. This is the this is the kind of thinking these days. Although, even materially speaking, if you go to school, you don't know everything in the beginning of your life. You have to go to school and learn these things. You have to go to college, learn these things. Very, very important. When it comes on that side, we have to go and learn. But when it comes to spirituality, somehow or other, people think, you can just do it yourself. Just whatever you think. That's yatamat tatapat, doesn't really matter. Any path is good. Spirituality, a poroshay, I'll just figure it out myself. No. It must be learnt through the disciplic succession. It's very, very important. You can't learn by yourself. And Prabhupada mentions here that the Vedic knowledge is very complicated. Simple things are one thing. Even materially, simple things, maybe you can kind of figure out. But when it gets more complicated, then you really have to learn from someone. You really have to learn from someone. Even as a matter, even in the trade, you can electrician. You can know a few things about how to fix things electrical, but when it gets complicated, you got to call in the electrician. You got to hear and learn from them, and on medicine and law and architecture. You got to learn, surgery, and as it becomes more complicated, the point is that there's no room for mistakes. This is the point. As it becomes complicated, there's no room for mistake. Just like a surgeon. Now, a surgeon is trained. One has to be trained how to perform the surgery. One learns. One's observed for a while, looking at the other one, and then when they, when they do a particular surgery, the mentor is right there. Right there, while that one's doing the surgery, the student's doing the surgery, they progress to actually doing some surgery. And I know about this because my friend went into this field, and also when I had an operation, I was operated on, and when I had a hernia, I was operated by the student. But I was very thankful to know that the mentor was standing right next to him. I was tempted to say, I don't know about this. The students can do the surgery because it's very complicated, and the slightest mistake, the patient dies on the operating table, right? Isn't it? The patient will die on the operating table. Just like a carpenter is trained to a certain level, and so one has to learn that. And if you look at the carpenter's tools and the surgeon's tools, they're quite similar. There's a saw, there's a drill, there's knives, There's all these things. So there you could think, well, I'll save money. Why go to the surgeon, pay so much money? I'll just get the carpenter to do it. Is anyone going to do that? You've got a big surgery, bring in the carpenter. I'll save a lot of money here. Why? Because they haven't been trained to the level. A carpenter can make some mistakes. It's not going to be such a big deal, or it can be to a certain point, but it's not such a big deal, that you put the wood out a bit or something like that. Of course, it can be catastrophic. They put the whole thing and they can collapse, kill people. But anyway, you get my point there. But with the surgeon, because it's much more complicated, they have to be trained, and there's no room for concoct manufacturing, do it on the fly, just trial and error. You can't do trial and error. It's kind of like today's civilization, trial and error. You try it, that didn't work. Try it that way. There's no trial and error when it gets better. And so too with Vedic knowledge. Vedic knowledge is very complicated. Prabhupada says it a few times here. Very, very complicated. And therefore there's no room, if it's actually knowledge, there's no use to theory. Theories, I always remember this when Prabhupada, we were walking through the botanical gardens in Melbourne, and Prabhupada stopped and he said that, what is the name of that tree? And someone said, I think it's a such and such tree, Prabhupada. Prabhupada said, you think? Do you know? No, I think. He said, go and have a look. And then he came back, no, Prabhupada, it's not that one I said, it's another one. He said, this is why you have to know and not just think. Always remember that. So it's very, very important that you learn and just, when you get taught, and there's certain options as far as performing an operation or doing so many things. But that you've learned. You've learned that. You don't manufacture those things yourself. So too in spiritual. Don't try to manufacture. It's too complicated. And it's too important. It's too important. You get a chance now in the human form of life. You come up through so many different species, and it's very important to just follow it exactly. Just take the humble position. Take the humble. But we've got so much false ego. No, I've got to do it myself. I don't like to follow anyone else. This kind of rugged individualism. No, why I have to? I got my own brain and my own way of doing things. I'll just do it my way. Yeah, okay, but if something's very complicated and very important, then you have to do it that way. If you want a certain result, then you have to do it that way. And that will work every time. Just like in cooking, if you follow the recipe, then it works. If you speculate, maybe it'll work, maybe it won't. Korma told me this, in the beginning he heard how to do things, he was just throwing it together, but then when then it was like a disaster sometimes and it worked the other time, but then when he followed recipes, and then when he was putting his cookbook together, I was with him, he said that he got help from different parts of the world, to different sort of country type of cuisine and stuff like that you can see in his cookbook, from Mexico, from here, from there, and he got the recipes, and he didn't know those particular dishes, but he just followed the recipe and cooked it, and it came out perfect every time, because he followed the recipe. So all these things, we know all these things. So similarly now, when you get the transcendental knowledge, you have to present it exactly. And this is the satisfaction of a true disciple. A true disciple doesn't like to, the guru says something, or the acharyas have said something, and they say something different, put a different slant. A true disciple won't like to do that. Of course, this is encouraged in modern education. Especially as you get higher up, you're doing your masters, this is encouraged. Don't present your own, we don't want to hear what someone else has presented. We want to hear something a little different, we want to hear from you, and so this is kind of encouraged, but not in the Vedic, not in the ancient parampara system. That's not encouraged. No, present. And that the disciple feels very happy when they can be a true follower and present it just nicely. No need to get into a false ego about it. Of course, one can present it kalapatra desh, according to time, place and circumstance. But even that, especially for beginners, one has to do that taking the advice of the very advanced devotees. Kalapatra desh, even kalapatra desh. You take just like, you can say, well, I'm a devotee, I'll do Kalapatradesh. But even that, you have to be very careful. Just like I remember years ago here, when Krodeshwar was here, was looking after the farm side of things, and at that time the farm was, financially very poor and didn't have any money, and we were kind of, really struggling. And so he was talking to one of the cattle farms in the area, and I forget, it was Everest or maybe what could have been Red Mackenzie. But he was saying, and he was just telling him, yeah, we're struggling a little bit like that. He said, and then he responded, the farmer responded, you guys are crazy. You got 200 head of cattle here. You could just slaughter them all tomorrow and you make $300,000. Why don't you just do that? Why do you have to cry poor? That's what he told him. Now, if you think that Kalapatradesh, time, place and circumstance, well, we're really struggling. Well, we'll just do that. We'll slaughter them, make $300,000 immediately. Right? So is that Kalapatradesh? Is that a good Kalapatradesh application? No. So for beginners, even Kalapatradesh, you should learn from the very advanced devotees. Kalapatradesh. Prabhupada gives the example of the Guru gives the instruction. The Guru gives the instruction about he wants a glass of water. And then the disciple thinks he'll embellish that a little bit. Well, the Guru wants water, but water, I'll get him some milk. I'll bring him some. I won't bring him the water, I'll bring him some milk. So then when he's going along, well, milk, with milk you need some puris. So it'll be, you can't just have milk, you need some puris with the milk. So then I'll make some puris with the milk and bring to the Guru. So then when they made the puris, they said, well, you can't just have puris, you've got to have sabji with the puris. Right? You've got to have sabji with the puris. So then he made some sabji. Then he made the sabji. Said, well, wait a minute, you can't have just sabji, you've got to have rice. You've got to have rice with the sabji. Right? So then he made the rice and the sabji and the puris. And then he said, well, rice, sabji, you've got to have dal. He made a whole big thing. And meanwhile, the Guru was waiting for his water, an hour and a half later. He's just about to take rest, knocks on the door, and he brings in this whole huge preparation. He said, where's my water? Oh, and that's the one thing he did forget. He got everything else but the water. So Prabhupada gives the example like that you can speculate and embellish and manufacture according to your whim, but that's not how to really do things. The Guru wants water, just bring in some water, and in the case of Kalapatradesh, you have to learn these things very, very carefully. Now, for example, here Prabhupada says, in the Bhagavad Gita, I was thinking about these verses, there's a very Srotam chakshush pashanam cha rasanam ginameva cha adhishtaya manascha vishana upashevatis. The living entity takes a certain type of birth in a body, gets a certain type of ear, gets a certain type of tongue, nose, sense of touch, and a mind is all grouped around the mind. And then he enjoys life after life in different bodies. But here in the next verse, Krishna says, Ukramantam stitam vapi bunjanam ga gunam vimudana pasiti gana chakshusha. He says that the foolish can't understand this. The vimudas. Krishna emphasizes the word mudha, which means like very foolish, ass. And vimuda, big ass. Patsanti jnana chakshusha. They can't understand these things. They haven't got the jnana chakshusha, and they haven't heard, because they're under the spell of the modes of nature. The modes of nature conditioning so much, they can't understand even the simple basic point of how the living entity goes from one body to another, gets a certain type of eyes, nose, ears, everything like that. Can't understand it. They're too foolish. They're mudhas. Krishna says they're mudhas. And then they're not trained. Now, Prabhupada emphasized in his purport, one has to be trained to perceive these things. Very important point. And if he's trained to perceive how this happens, then he's considered very fortunate. Very, very fortunate. Even these simplest things, even the greatest minds can't understand. They just can't accept them. They can't understand them. How is it possible? No, it can't be like that. So when you go, all fields of knowledge are in the Veda, and when you go right up to creation, which is also That's also coming from the Supreme Personality of God. So Prabhupada emphasizes on all these subjects, all this type of knowledge. It's all there in the Veda. That's Apurushaya, even to the point of the creation. So when Sukadeva Goswami and Prabhupada ends his purport by saying, when Sukadeva Goswami talks about creation, we have to accept it. Maybe we don't understand it, but we have to accept it because it is Apurushaya. Even right up to creation. Prabhupada and another, he says, talks about all the theories of the chunk and the Big Bang and all the steady state and all the different theories they have about creation that people accept. A Darwin theory. Darwin theory. Prabhupada says, no, we don't accept Darwin theory, that man evolved from the lower and then came and became intelligent. So he said, no, because the first being of the universe was the most intelligent. The first being of the universe was Lord Brahma. Here it said Vedagava, Swayambhu. He wasn't born like normal people. He was born directly from the lotus flower and the lotus petals directly from the abdomen of Garbhodakshaya Vishnu, and he received the knowledge through. So he's the most intelligent. But then the Darwin theory is no, the man came from the lower and then gradually came up like that and then developed intelligence. And then primitive man, there was and then the man evolved to become more intelligent. No, Prabhupada says no, it wasn't like, because the first man, Brahma, he was the most intelligent. We don't accept. So that's based on what the Vedas teach, what the Shastras teach us. So we accept that because it's a Purashaya. Purashaya, they are presenting. Can be so many things they are presenting. Maybe not. Maybe not. I always remember this. I was in Prabhupada's room in Melbourne when the disciple brought in the Asian gospel. And he showed it to Prabhupada. In here it talks about, reincarnation, the Asian gospel. And Prabhupada, He said, yeah, maybe not. He said, maybe it's true, maybe not. But we don't know exactly, but we stand on the ground of Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam. Then we are on the solid ground. If you try to introduce other things outside of the Veda, maybe it's true, maybe it's not true. You don't know for sure. So he said, better stick to the solid ground. Better stick to the solid ground. So this is our way. This is the way to get the knowledge. And here, yatanto yoginas chainam pasyant yatmanya vashita yatanto pyakitatmana nainam pasyant yachetasa. The endeavoring transcendentalists who are situated in self-realization can see all this very clearly. But those whose minds are not developed and who are not situated in self-realization cannot see what is taking place, although they may try to do it. So here the point is made, there is knowledge, then there is assimilation of this knowledge. Jnana and vijnana. Get the knowledge, and then you have to assimilate, in other words, put it into practice. It's like the teaching in the Gurukul, where you have the vidyas, you get the knowledge, you hear it, and then the kalas is the art, and you put it into practice. You put it into practice through so many different ways. So it's very important to get the knowledge and then put it into practice. And that by putting into practice, you assimilate it and you get more and more realization. So here it is said like that. The word jnana chakshusha is very significant. Without knowledge, one cannot understand. One needs a lot of knowledge from books like Bhagavad Gita and similar literatures, heard from the bona fide guru. So therefore you hear it and just repeat it. And the glory of a disciple is that they've repeated exactly. And Prabhupada stresses on this point again and again. Brahma, Krishna taught Brahma to Narad exactly, Narad Vyas to Sukadeva, exactly. Kalapatradesh is there, time, place and circumstance, but the basic principle will not be altered. And it needs someone very expert to know exactly Kalapatradesh. Very, very expert. The time, what is the time now, the patra, what is the circumstance, the desh of the plate, the country. Bhaktivinoda Thakur has spoken about this. In the different countries, people will play different musical instruments and they'll sing certain melodies. So they can do in those ways. But of course, we learned from Prabhupada, our founder, how he wanted to do things. So even Kalapatradesh. So the main thing is what's the word, a legitimate, a very loyal follower. And this is, for disciples, this is their satisfaction. The more they stick exactly to what has been presented in the past. So these are the main points here given in the class, in the verse today, and also in the purport by Srila Prabhupada. So I'll just read this again, if anyone has any question or comment. Etadivatma buddha naradaya vipritchate vedagabo vyadat shakshat yadaha hari atmana. My dear King Brahma, the firstborn, on being questioned by Narad, exactly apprised him on this subject, as it was directly spoken by the Lord to his own son, who was impregnated with Vedic knowledge from his birth. Any questions or comments? Nope. Jai, all glories to Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Gaur Premanandi, Hari Hari Bol.